cable goes to.
Sorry, repeat that? Oh, that wasn't me.
That's not pretty far. Is that for Tony? For Tony? Yeah.
Okay, off then.
Mario says it's area over there somewhere.
I mean, I'll Gumby, but not that far.
Rachel dropped.
I'll link him up to another wireless as well. I mean, we can definitely add him to that other thing with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, the other Wi-Fi is totally dead. Is it working?
just came in. Caroline Lutnick.
What? She may have to give up on this. Okay.
Let's see, Eli.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America and the President of the Russian Federation.
Уважаемый господин президент,
Mr. President,
дамы и господа,
ladies and gentlemen,
наши переговоры
our negotiations have been held in a constructive atmosphere of mutual
были
respect.
весьма обстоятельными
We
и
had very
полезными.
thorough negotiations that were quite useful. I would like to thank once again my American counterpart
предложение
for the
приехать на
proposal
Аляску.
to travel out here to
Вполне
Alaska.
логично
It
встретиться
only
именно
makes sense
здесь,
that we've met
ведь
here,
наши страны,
because our
хоть нас
countries,
разделяют океаны,
though
на самом
separated by the
деле
oceans,
близкие
are
соседи.
close neighbors.
И я, когда мы встретились,
So when we've met,
вышли из самолетов, я так
when I
сказал,
came out of the plane and I've said,
добрый день, дорогой
good
сосед,
afternoon, dear
очень
neighbor.
приятно видеть вас
Very good to see you
в добром здравии
in good
и
health
живым.
and to see you
И
alive.
по-соседски это очень
I think that is very
звучит,
neighborly,
по-моему, по-доброму.
and I think that's some
Нас разделяет только
kind words
Берингов
that we can
пролив.
say
Да
to
и
each
то,
other.
там два
We're
острова
separated by the Strait of
между
Bering, though there are two islands
российским
only
и
between the Russian
американским
island
островом
and
всего
the
4
US island. They're
километра.
only 4
Мы близкие
kilometers
соседи,
apart.
это факт.
We're close neighbors,
Важно
and it's a
также, что
fact.
с Аляской связана
It's also
значительная
important
часть
that
общей
Alaska
истории
has to
России
do with our
и
common
США.
heritage,
Многие
common history between
позитивные
Russia and the
события.
US, and
Так,
many
здесь и
positive
по
events
сей
have
день
to do with that
сохраняется
territory.
огромное культурное
Still, there
наследие
is
после
tremendous
русской мире.
cultural heritage back
Православные
from the Russian
храмы,
America. For example,
множество,
Orthodox
более
churches
700
and a
географических
lot of
названий,
more than
имеющих русское
700
происхождение.
geographical names of Russian
В
origin.
ходе Второй мировой войны
During
именно
the
на
Second World
Аляске
War, it was here
начиналась
in
легендарная
Alaska that was the
авиамагистраль
origin
для
of the
поставок
legendary
боевых
air bridge
самолетов
for
и
the
другой
supply of military
техники по
aircraft and
договору
other equipment
Ленд-Лиза.
under the Land-Lease
Это был
program.
опасный,
It was a
сложный
dangerous
маршрут
and treacherous
над
route
громадными ледяными
over the
пространствами.
vast
Но летчики и
emptiness of
специалисты двух
ice.
стран делали все,
However, the
чтобы
pilots of
приблизить
both countries
победу.
did everything to bring closer
Рисковали
the victory.
своей жизнью
They
в
risked
общей
their
победе.
lives and
Вот
they
я
gave it all
сейчас
for the
только
common
что был
victory.
в городе Магадане,
I was
в
just
России, там
in the city
памятник
of
стоит
Magadan in Russia, and there is a
российским и
memorial there
американским
dedicated to
летчикам.
the Russian and the
И флаг
US
на
pilots.
памятнике российский
And
и
there are two
американский.
flags, the
Я знаю,
US
что
flag
и
and the Russian
здесь,
flag.
и здесь
And I
тоже
know that
есть
here
такой
as
же
well,
памятник. На
there is
военном
such a
кладбище
memorial.
всего в нескольких километрах отсюда
There is a military
захоронены
burial
советские
place
пилоты,
several kilometers away
погибшие
from
при
here.
выполнении той
The Soviet
героической
pilots that
миссии.
buried there who died during that dangerous mission. We're thankful to the citizens and the government of the U.S. for carefully taking care of their memory. I think that's very worthy and noble. We'll always remember other historical examples when our countries defeated common enemies together in the spirit of battle camaraderie and allyship that supported each other and facilitated each other. I'm sure that this heritage will help us rebuild and foster mutually beneficial and equal ties at this new stage, even during the hardest conditions. It is known that there have been no summits between Russia and the U.S. for 4 years, and that's a long time. This time was very hard for bilateral relations, and let's be frank, they've fallen to the lowest point since the Cold War. I think that's not benefiting our countries and the world as a whole. It is apparent that sooner or later, we have to amend the situation to move on from the confrontation to dialogue. And in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been long overdue, naturally, under the condition of serious and painstaking work. And this work has been done in general. Me and President Trump have very good direct contact. We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone. And special envoy of the President, Mr. Witkoff, traveled out to Russia several times. Our advisors and heads of foreign ministries kept in touch all the time. And you know fully well that one of the central issues was the situation around Ukraine. We see the strive of the administration and President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict. And his strive to get to the crux of the matter, to understand its history, is precious. As I've said, the situation in Ukraine has to do with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation, however strange it may sound in these conditions. We have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us, a terrible wound. Therefore, the country is sincerely interested in putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict, and we've said it multiple times, to consider all legitimate concerns of Russia and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and in the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump, as he has said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well. Naturally, we are prepared to work on that. I would like to hope that the agreement that we've reached together will help us bring closer that goal and will pave the path towards peace in Ukraine. We expect that Kiev and European capitals will perceive that constructively and that they won't throw a wrench in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nascent progress. Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration. We see that Arctic cooperation is also very possible. And our international context, for example, between the Far East of Russia and the West Coast of the U.S. Overall, it's very important for our countries to turn the page, to go back to cooperation. It is symbolic that not far away from here, the border between Russia and the U.S., there is a so-called international date line. I think you can step over, literally, from yesterday into tomorrow. And I hope we'll succeed in that. in political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work, for the well-wishing and trustworthy tone of our conversation. It's important that both sides are result-oriented, and we see that the President of the U.S. has a very clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about the prosperity of his nation. Still, he understands that Russia has its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for the solution of the Ukrainian issue, but also will help us bring back business-like and pragmatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump is saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, business-like and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing with tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career. He's seen it all. But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He knew it was a hoax, and I knew it was a hoax. But what was done was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to have dealt with. But we'll have a good chance when this is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell President Putin and his entire team, who I know in many cases, other than that, whose faces I get to see all the time in the newspapers. You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one right over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again.
Down, please, sir, down. Down, please, thank you, thank you.
They are moving the pool right now. They're rushing the pool out. I'll apologize to the advocates because I can see them all moving. U.S. pool. Down. Thank you, Chris.
Down. Down.